Empowered Health, a podcast shedding light on how healing is an inside job. Keys to your inner power and total transformation. Discussing wholeness, wellness, and the effects of the mind on the physical and energetic parts of our being. A podcast to support you, moving from fear and pain into wellness and purpose. Belief, hope, connection, energetic keystones for transformation and inner power. Sacred knowledge that inspires us to look within, to find our own unique path. Empowered Health, release and rewire to become what you truly are, strong, whole, and empowered.
Welcome to the Empowered Mind, Empowered Health podcast, the keys to empowered and heart-aligned living for the conscious game changers with Dr. Jane. Today we have Moshe Block. Dr. Block is the author of The Revolution of Naturopathic Medicine, Remaining True to Our Philosophy. He is introducing the V Dialogue, a book about a breakthrough healing method uniting the worlds of mind-body medicine and psychology. He graduated from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine and went on to complete the homeopathic clinician course with Liv Klein. He teaches the wisdom and knowledge that helped heal him and others in his holistic counseling course for NDs. Dr. Block, welcome. And I understand you've recovered from quite a serious autoimmune disease, which has led you to what you teach today, your counseling, and a lot about mind-body medicine. So can we start there? That sounds like a great place.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So nice to be on your show. 25 years ago, I first started to develop symptoms of myasthenia gravis. I was very sick. I had severe paralysis of my triceps. I couldn't even barely get out of a chair. You know, I could go on and on about the symptoms, but they were pretty severe. And I went to this retreat called the Options Institute. It's in Massachusetts. It's led by Barry Neil Kaufman and Samaria Kaufman. They had a child who was autistic in the 70s. And there's this whole series of amazing revelations that came from their work called Sunrise, the Miracle. Like, their child went from autistic to completely recovered with this technique of simply sitting and mirroring the child, just to mirror, like not try to. At the time in the 70s, they were tying up children. They were sticking them in the closet. They were chaining them to these bedposts. It was horrible for autistic kids.
Yeah.
So their child became completely healed, and then they developed this sort of movement or organization where they taught people how to understand belief systems. So I was there, and the first half an hour of this program that I took, my life was changed to understand the concept of a belief system. Such a powerful concept, yet something that was a little bit beyond my awareness. And then I had an actual dialogue done where I was being asked questions, simple questions to, get me thinking, going deeper. And I encountered this, my own belief system, which is that I needed to be perfect. That was the belief. Now, when I say belief, I literally believed that I needed to be perfect in order to be good, right? And the next question was the life-changing question, like, what makes you think you need to be perfect? And then the answer came to me spontaneously. That doesn't always happen with my patients or when we work, but in my case, and in some cases it does. And the answer was, holy smokes, I don't. But I never thought about it before. I never put my mind to that before. And I had a spontaneous healing. I felt the chi, the life force, the pranic, the strength, the blood flow into my arms. My eyes open up, my breathing open up, my legs lighten up, and I had a spontaneous healing. And I really, in that experience, I think I got what I needed for the years to come in teaching what I teach, holistic body medicine, understanding how our beliefs are the source of our illness or our stress or our problem, and then they manifest chronically into physical disease. And I even teach about how that cascade happens through the different systems of the body. But that gave me the confidence or the faith to go the long run with developing the course and coming to understand mind-body medicine better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's amazing. And it's interesting, you must have held such tension from that belief, and it was a core belief, probably in your subconscious, where it doesn't readily reveal itself, but right. Just becoming aware of it changed everything.
It changed everything. There wasn't just tension, there was also like self-hatred, there was self-abuse. Like if I believe, it's kind of math, belief systems are kind of mathematical. If X, then Y kind of thing. If I need to be perfect and I judge myself as having done something that's not perfect, then along comes stupid, beating myself up. And this is where I kind of came to understand or really see for myself the idea that the body is a reflection of the mind. That the belief was, bad, you're bad because you're not perfect. That's like the other side of the coin is like you're bad, or you should hate yourself, or that's what followed the belief that I'm not perfect or I need to be perfect. And then came the body reflecting that attack of the self, which I've seen in, I'd say, a large majority of my autoimmune diseases that I work with, people that have autoimmune disease, that they have some form of hatred of self and attacking of themselves. So then the immune system says, hey, we're in the business, the body says we're in the business of attacking itself. And the soldiers that are there normally for defense turn against the self, and you see some kind of self-attack with the the immune system.
Exactly. I often talk with patients about homeopathy, how their physical symptoms are a mirror of what's going on in their mind. So that's why we always go into what's happening in their mind. And so this
good for you.
Is beautiful. Yeah. So tell us, because some people don't know what myasthenia gravis is.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate?
It's a rare-ish, I say ish because it's become less rare, autoimmune disease where the immune cells, the white blood cells, attack the junction between the nerves sending signals from the brain to the muscles, receiving those signals and then contracting. So the immune cells get all over the receptors of the muscles so that the messages can't get there, and it leads to paralysis. And they called it gravis, which means serious in Latin, because it could lead to death from paralysis of the diaphragm.
Right. Yeah. So it affects the breathing and swallowing and everything eventually.
Yeah. It can attack all voluntary muscle.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so tell us more about your technique with mind body. You said you can explain the cascade that happens.
Yeah, that's right. So I look at, so there's, in yoga and these different cosmologies like Kabbalah and acupuncture, Chinese medicine, it establishes that we're multidimensional beings. And this, of course, in naturopathic medicine, we acknowledge too, that there's general, in simple terms, that we are soul/spirit level, and then we have the mind level, then the emotional level, and then the physical level. So in my understanding, when there's a choice, like our true nature, this is the foundation of holistic counseling that I teach. Our true nature is I am. It's pure consciousness. It's unconditionally okay. It doesn't need anything. It's not attached to anything, because its okayness is inherent in the beingness of who we really are. And that is where we're all aspiring to return to. I put in quotations. You can't see my little fingers going like this, but I have quotations going, because we're not really returning to anywhere, because we've always been there, but we've just gotten really confused and misidentified with other aspects of our ego that we think are really important. So here you have the I am, which is the foundation of our truth, and then the mind is at a lower level. When the mind is in a state of wisdom, it's in flux and in flow with the I am. But when it starts to latch onto something, a condition, I need this to be happy, I need to be perfect, or I need to be rich, or I need to be even loved. That's a condition too. I need to be loved. It's the condition starts to grab on, and the flow of chi will start to become blocked on the lower level, which is the vital force, which is closely related to the emotional field. So the emotional field will start to get involved in this false belief, the cascade of the waterfall that descends from the unconditionality of the soul, say, we could call it that, starts to become strangulated in the belief that the person is holding on to, defining that they need for their reality. So then the emotion will dry up, or seize up, or freeze up, or overheat, or whatever, in reflection of whatever the belief is. And then the body will be the last part of the cascade to not be nourished by the nurturing supply of chi or prana or energy. And then and then it'll either become rigid or too lax, and it depends on what the belief is. It reflects the belief.
Right. Perfect. So I always, I see it as when the unconscious belief is canceled out, there's a return to an alignment, which allows you to be in touch with who you truly are, or your higher self. And you're calling it the I am, which we all
Yes.
are part of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that I am, I mean, it's been called many things. It's been called Atman in yogic, Vedic, Hindu philosophy. It's called Yahweh in Judaism, and Christ, and there's lots of different expressions for that. It is a unifying principle, and I think that when we heal, we ultimately become more aligned with that true self, and things become a lot more harmonious and peaceful, and we, our contribution to society is one of edifying and building and harmonizing, rather than causing chaos and destruction and ignorance and stuff like that.
Right. So just to be aware that this can happen is empowering. And how do you get people to be aware of their core, that this belief that is causing so much trouble in their physical?
Well, usually a person, as a practitioner, as a naturopathic doctor, somebody will come to me with an ailment. They're suffering. So it's through the suffering. I actually really, this is a funny statement, but I actually really appreciate suffering.
Yeah.
Because suffering makes a person look for answers. So they're suffering. It could be emotional suffering, mental suffering, and also physical suffering. It could be a lack of energy, pain, whatever it is. That suffering is a message from the inner being that something is off, because it's unmistakable. A person that is not living in harmony with the self ultimately has to have some sign that they're not living in harmony, even though we can really live for quite some time disconnected from our true self and be in that illusionary world and live, quote unquote, happily. We could live happily there, happily ignorantly. But at some point, when the soul, I don't know how this is determined, but the soul decides, all right, suffering is going to come now to bring some change. So then the person sits down figuratively in front of me. We work together, ask them questions. We start with the pathology. The worst point of suffering is the channel to the greatest release. How are you feeling? What is that like? When did that start? It's very similar in many ways to a good homeopathic intake. You know Jim Sensenig? You know Dr. Jim Sensenig? He's a big vitalist from the US who passed on just last year. He started the movement along with a couple of others like Jared Zeff and Letitia Dick Cronenberg. So they started the Vitalist organization, Naturopathic Medicine Institute. So all that mouthful just to say that Dr. Sensenig used to say, the truth is the truth is the truth. And so when I'm working, and I totally love homeopathy too, and I practice heavily with homeopathy, and I see that the homeopathic intake and also the belief working with the beliefs that work so well together. The two work so well together. So that's one way that I help people. Another way is I'm also training practitioners to heal themselves, to learn to embody the letting go state of the I am in practice, in their lives, and then they can then help their patients or their clients or whatever they might call them.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so when you teach, what are some of the principles?
Well, funny enough, I actually teach the principles of naturopathic medicine.
Yeah?
Because they are there for a reason. You know, a lot of the colleges pay them lip service, but they're not really being shared much anymore. There's not really the medicines that are really embodying them, although homeopathy does actually embody the principles of, treat the whole person, treat the underlying cause. Doctor is teacher through the remedy. The remedy becomes the teacher. Treat the whole person. So that's kind of what I see. I kind of lost my train of thought. Where was I at the beginning of that part?
Well, you were talking about how naturopathic principles are part of what you teach and treat the whole person. And
yes. Yeah, so I teach, I absolutely use those principles. We go through it in the beginning, then I share the connection between the mind and the body and how pathology develops from false beliefs. I also use this principle, which I understand is it's a very universal, I'm going to call it a universal truth that you see when you study Zen, when you study Taoism, when you study Buddhism or yoga, or really even in mystical Christianity and mystical Judaism, Kabbalah, you see this idea that who we really are is the I am. It's beyond definition. It's beyond attachment. And it's so when I'm working with someone, I'm really just sitting with a person who is embodied. The soul is embodied in their ego, in their body, with all these stories and all this suffering and pain. It's just to help them remember and return to this awareness that who they are is beyond the definition that they've attached themselves to. It's an effortless place. It's a release into, it's a falling back into, instead of something that is effortful. So I definitely work with that principle of letting go into what we already are rather than needing to do something, right? Like the idea, sometimes when I work with a patient and they've gotten a really good dialogue, they feel they're in that moment, they're very released. If at that point, Jane, I recommend something like, and I really see the remedy, whatever, Thuya or Metarina, whatever, I really see that for you. Then I watch their eyes gloss over and they lose that place of connection with the truth that they are beyond the definition, and then they externalize the healing to the substance. And I work with homeopathy when people are stuck, but when they've moved past the belief and they're in their I am, sometimes we lose touch just by suggesting anything, because that suggests you need this to be healthy, to be well, right? And then they identify, they attach to that. So that's an important point too.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I think today that we give away so much of our power to something else. And this taking it back in this way is so beautiful, because we all have that innate wisdom to know how to heal and let go and be powerful. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, incredible.
I so agree. And in fact, if there is a lesson to all of the pandemic, it is that we need to trust ourselves. We need to listen to ourselves. And if we're not sure about how to do that, well, it's time to get learning. It's time to sort that out, to take some chances, to trust your gut. You know, everybody's intuitive. Even like, I hate to stereotype anybody, but even like a real kind of shut down person who, I don't know, smokes all day and watches TV and kicks the dog and shouts and yells and totally out of touch with their self, they have strong intuition, but they don't necessarily know when the intuition is speaking versus when the desires or their pain or their woundedness is trying to steer the wheel, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about learning how to listen.
Yeah.
And where it comes from. So how would you describe that? Yeah.
Pardon me?
How do you describe listening to your intuition? Like, how do you?
Well, it's like a gut feeling. It's like this, it's like a sense of, it's like a push, and also one of the ways is pretty simple. And I think a lot of people appreciate this because it simplifies the idea of intuition. Like some people think, you know, you got to get in yogic posture and roll your eyes back in your head and then the intuition comes, but it's not like that. Sometimes it's as simple as what you really feel like you want. That's it. And I don't mean, now we need to discern a little bit between what we want with our heart and what we desire based in attachment and need. So I can say, oh, I really want, let's say, to be respected. But if I really look at that a little closer, well, it's more like I need it because I feel like, well, I'm insecure and I need that respect because then that's going to make me feel better about myself. That's not what I mean by trusting intuition. It's the feeling of like, I really feel like I want to put on some music and dance a little bit. I really feel like it's like a feeling that comes with a sense of joy about it. It's a lightness. It's not burdened by need or attachment or a belief, right? I feel really drawn to that person. I want to talk to them. When you trust that, things really unfold, you know, in a way which is healing and exciting also, I think.
Yeah. And there is that connection to the heart.
There's that connection to the heart. Yes.
That's very important.
Yes.
So how, you know, I often contemplate how fear and, you know, even fear of disease or dying can really control our actions and almost take over. Because it's the opposite, right?
Yeah,
Just
that's
talk
right.
about, just talk about that, how that influences us to almost give,
Absolutely.
and there we almost give away our power.
Oh, 100%. When you're afraid of anything, well, fear is like the ultimate fear. Death, the fear of death is the ultimate fear. That there's this fear like of the loss of the self, which is based on the false belief that we are the manifested body that we're living in and the emotional field that we've grown in and that the mental ideas that we've constructed, all these things are very temporary. So really the fear of death is the fear of not existing as that thing that we've identified as being. And again, it comes back to the I am. The I am is the permanent state of the infinite. You know, in the Judeo-Christian, the statement is something along the lines of that God is, was, and shall always be. That's the permanent state of who we really are. And when we really realize who we really are, there's no fear of death. Sure, you look like you don't want to walk in a off a cliff, or if there's a hungry lion around, there's still caution of preservation of this vessel, which is a blessing to live in. But the fear really drops. And what's interesting, the fear of death can subconsciously drive a person to really avoid and to be in control and whatever that may be. But it's also the fear of the loss of control that comes at the stage of enlightenment. The two are the same, because for a soul, you, me, in a way that's a misnomer, because the soul, there's individual cells, but then the soul is the unified field. So to say a soul is a bit of a misnomer, like the language is limited. But for each of us, as we remember who we really are, there is that awareness that this thing that I identify, me, Moshe, I'm this guy, I grew up like this, and I love these things, and I have these propensities, and well, that guy is going to die and be no longer. Whether it's through the enlightenment process of willfully recognizing that impermanence and detaching from, and then enjoying the experience of that, but not attached to it, or literally at the end of our lives when we die. So either way, we have to let that go. That's why some of the, like Shintoism and different practices that really focus on death and have death in the forefront of the mind that's very empowering. Because if you're not afraid to die, then you're not afraid of, you don't need to control, and you could live a lot more in the heart space.
Yeah. Yeah. And thus not be controlled the same, because you're
Right.
connected to your own choice.
That's a good point. Back to your important message about empowerment. Exactly. Right. Because if somebody's dangling out the fear that you might die, so that you might then take on a solution to avoid the fear, that makes you susceptible to that influence, whatever that influence is. And if it's not a good influence, well, then that's good not to be afraid of death, so that you're not tempted to think that you need that.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. And there's a sense of contraction in your body as soon as you go into fear, and a panic that you need to follow certain protocols and do certain things to survive. And as soon as you center yourself, you go into listening to your intuition and your own heart and what's best for you. So they're very, you can feel yourself shift between them.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're aware. Yeah.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But also, very important. So even someone that is suddenly diagnosed with something.
Yeah.
It sends you into this cascade of fear and, run for your life almost, and do whatever I'm told, and you lose that connection.
Yeah, so many people, when they're diagnosed with something serious like cancer, or it could even be strep throat. It could be anything that could have serious complications if it's not dealt with well. It's what really separates the practitioners that have faith and the people that have faith in the healing. And this is not a blind faith. This is not a throwing caution to the wind and jumping off the cliff blindly. It's actually knowing that the modalities that we have and the healing power of nature, which is what we really identify with in homeopathy and naturopathic medicine, the vital force. It really can heal. It really can. And it's some practitioners, when they themselves are challenged, and I don't want this to be judgmental, I'm just trying to make a point, but they will opt for the path of fear. And it's not that the path of fear is actually, there's any security there, but there's a strong belief that the conventional path, say, the path that has identified itself as being the authority of medicine, on our planet, that's right. That's what it's convinced humanity about. And if you look at the history over 100 years ago, that agenda, that purpose to convince humanity that the conventional medical model is the only true and scientific model. It's all based on this coercion and the idea that if you repeat something enough, people will believe it. Well, that's been repeated so many times that people believe so much in conventional medicine that they will, when they're faced with their moment in their health, they will feel that that's what they need to do. And, sometimes that works, but very often it might work, but it also has dire consequences, like the destruction of one's health. Even if you're sick, you still have a vital energy, so you destroy your vital health. And then often it doesn't work, but they still put their faith in it and are afraid to step out of that. I had a discussion with Dr. Andre Sain a few days ago, and I mean, this man is just amazing. His track record and his awareness of how effective homeopathy is and our different naturopathic medicine modalities, they're so effective. But the narrative that has gone on has really undermined that awareness, so that even naturopathic students, they're afraid when they graduate, if they get a case of strep throat or pneumonia or something that could be potentially dangerous, there is potential there. They don't want to touch it. They're going to refer, if they can prescribe drugs, they're going to give the antibiotic. And man, Andre's like, no, these things are quite easy to deal with if you know what you're doing. So we need our elders, we need our elders that have this experience to come back into our profession, because there's been a systematic removal of our elders from the colleges for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times for this type of medicine if you're in an emergency and you have no alternative. But to weigh the consequences, to know that it's going to affect your immune system in a certain way, and you're going to have to make that up as well if you're going to truly heal, but to weigh everything, not just follow blindly, I think is really important. And then to find someone that can help you, lead you out of that, but empower you, right? To truly heal from, like you say, they're all a signpost of what's going on a mental, emotional level.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. The more acute that something is, the more heroic the measures that are required to bring it into balance. And conventional medicine does offer, I think, in quite a few instances, the best solution when it comes to emergency medicine. Now, we do have tools at our fingertips for dealing with acute disease that we can, but when the acute situation, it doesn't matter so much how we do. We just want to bring that, we want to quell that. If it's life-threatening, because our first principle, just like in conventional medicine, is do no harm. First, do no harm. But for chronic illness, that's when, if the person has a little bit of time, that's when you really want to work the path of understanding that person is sick for a reason. The reason that they're sick has a lot to do with where they're stuck in the evolution of their self back to their true nature. And so there's an opportunity there to not only heal, but also to grow in the direction that I believe we're all meant and actually evolving toward. So to just, in a chronic case, to say, oh, let's just deal with the symptoms. Let's help this person heal, even if it's through the systems-based approach, functional medicine. We could come up with clever ways to resolve the manifestation of symptoms. Well, the person might be missing missing a very important lesson there, which they probably will have to repeat at some point.
Yeah. right? Because it's like it could be seen as a gift, and if you go into it, then you can grow from it. But
Yes.
if you choose to cover it up and not address it really, then you've lost the opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a, most people look for the truth when they suffer. If you can help alleviate their suffering without healing it at the root of the suffering, then I do believe in some cases, I don't want to say all the time, but there's a certain disservice there to that person, because there's an opportunity to really understand themselves better and to be a better person in their own, in their own self. Versus, like, let's say a person has a very strong belief system and then they get symptoms of disease because of that, and then you just kind of work at the symptoms level and the suffering is alleviated. Well, now that person's belief hasn't changed. In fact, it grows in strength and size,
Yeah, yeah,
and it will manifest again. It
yeah,
will.
yeah. Thus the need for stronger, medicine to cover it up and work with it even more. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we would encourage looking inside.
Yeah.
Now, you've written a book about naturopathic principles. And I think that's wonderful to talk about because few understand the true principles of naturopathic medicine.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I wrote the first book I ever published was in 2004. It was called The Revolution of Naturopathic Medicine. And the subtitle is Remaining True to Our Philosophy. In CCNM, the Canadian College in Toronto of Naturopathic Medicine, it was a good school. There was a lot of really good education at the time. But still, there was this identity crisis that existed in the profession at that time. Now, I'd say it's much worse. It's gotten much worse. But then there was some still, the light was shining in the profession a little bit more. And, but there was a frustration in myself for 4 years of wanting to learn the real principles. You got smatterings of it in homeopathy. You got smatterings of it in Chinese medicine. In counseling, you maybe got a little bit of a hint of it. But then it was just really getting shouldered out by this great need of naturopathic medicine to kind of emulate the conventional medical model, but with, supplements instead of drugs. So it's green allopathy, as I'm sure you know the term, and many people know the term. So I just felt compelled to write the book. And I got into for 7 days, I was 6 or 7 days, I got into a very, just meditated, I got into a state and I wrote all day long for 7 days. And then I got it all out of my system. Of course, I had to go back and edit it, but I got everything down that I wanted to express. And that's in the book, The Revolution of Naturopathic Medicine. I recently, a few years ago, I published my second book in naturopathic principles. It's called Holistic Counseling, Introducing the Vise Dialogue. And the Vise Dialogue is the dialogue that I teach practitioners how to ask questions to get to the root cause, and not just to reveal it, but then to help a person see all the little tendrils and roots that that belief is attached to. Because the revelation of the belief is just the beginning. Sometimes it leads to a spontaneous healing, but most of the time the person is attached to it because their survival depends upon it. And so they really, they identify with this belief strongly. And so the rest of the course is designed for, and the book also addresses these things, how to help a person unravel and then to unchoose or to choose their true nature rather than being attached to it.
Yeah, I am quite like-minded. I understand the need for supplements to support the physical, but I feel it's secondary. I feel that the core problem is usually a mental emotional, unless it's, an extremely toxic situation. Someone's been, poisoned by toxicity. And
Yeah.
that as well often has a mental emotional component as well, because the body's not able to cast off, the toxins. But I've always felt, how can we heal if we haven't got to the root cause, which is often mental emotional? So
Yeah, absolutely.
I completely resonate with what you're saying, and how mind body medicine is so important. And for me, it's been homeopathy, but you're
Yeah,
taking it even, a step beyond, or using the two in conjunction. But
definitely.
I think I don't understand how we can just, because you can spend hundreds of dollars on supplements, and as soon as you go off, it returns, like,
Yeah. Or they do nothing.
or they do
Or
nothing. Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I have a respect for allopathy, for the
Mhm.
allopathic path of giving something for symptoms, because sometimes we need that.
Mhm.
Sometimes the person is so depressed that you cannot access them to have a dialogue. You're not really certain in the moment for what remedy to give them or whatever. They don't have access to that. They're not going to that, and they need a little bit support. They're drowning in their sorrow and their depression, and a little antidepressant, not necessarily pharmaceutical possibly, but naturopathic supplement or something could be very helpful, could be what they need. But then when in the general cases, there is a lot more wiggle room than that, and that's when we want to do the big healing. You know, what you said about toxicity is interesting. I have my own personal experience. Like, I had two bouts of illness. I had one 25 years ago, and then one 5 years ago, when I went to a different quantum level in the subconscious, a manifestation of disease. So it was when I found out I was to be a father. Oh Lordy, that brought up a lot of stuff. And one of the things that happened was that I became quite poisoned, um, because I was careless, and I was valuing, like, one of my things, another belief or attachment, is to this path of spiritual enlightenment. And so I so thought that my life is over, and my desire to achieve spiritual enlightenment is so over, because now here I am going to be a father, and I'm going to have this responsibility. And this was a big false belief that
Yeah.
I encountered, that the suffering, I mean, it came on another bout of illness, but at a deeper level. It looked different. Um, but I became highly toxic because I work in alchemy. I actually studied and practiced alchemy for many years, and I was careless because I wanted, as a means of, enlightenment, alchemy, and so what, throw caution to the wind and use antimony, and I got so poisoned. Now the antimony was stuck inside of me, and my vital force was so affected by it that I couldn't operate and even access my own mental field until I understood how I had thrown caution to the wind, because I desired enlightenment, which is an externalization, even though it's kind of a noble path to believe that you need something, or you need this path to be enlightened. It's a very subtle paradox of enlightenment, is that we already are that. So it's not a matter of doing something, but I so identified with needing to do something that I thought that as a father, that's it, my life's over, no chance. So until I understood that, the antimony was frozen inside of me, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I needed to recognize my lack of self-care, and my almost like a desperate attempt to get that. Then I felt this sense of shift, and then the antimony could dump out of my system.
Right.
So that still, even with poisoning, it, like exactly what you said, it can still go hand in hand with some belief and attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting about even an attachment to enlightenment. That
Yes.
is like such an interesting conversation, because there's almost has to be a surrender to life,
Right.
and kids bring that, don't they? They're
Yes.
like, They
Yeah.
pull you almost completely out of where you were or what you could be, and you have to reinvent yourself. And so there's this surrender.
Yeah. Yeah. And also being there to live for someone else. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a kind of narcissism in this pursuit of enlightenment. I know it sounds crazy, but definitely I could speak for myself. I felt very attached to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and my children have shown me that there what's really important is the surrender of the self. Like, whether it's at the end of our life, like we said before, and you die, that self is going away, bye bye. Not the true self, but the manifest self that
Yeah.
we identify with. Or you do it through enlightenment, or through children, or through some path of service where the self is surrendered in that service. I was really attached to it was an egoic pursuit of enlightenment, which is really it's oxymoronic. Egoic pursuit of enlightenment. No, sorry. No.
Yeah. Yeah, there's such a surrender to having kids. And mine got a little bit older, and then I got 5 horses. And that requires another service. And,
Yeah.
whenever I've been in my deepest depressions, we can talk about this, because I have found just surrendering and asking the universe, how can I help, has pulled me out of every really difficult, dark place I've ever been, and showed me, like, I'll get filled with a love energy and the next door will open. Like,
Mm,
it's so crazy. And it's always about service. Like, it's always about, how can I help? And
yeah.
even when you have to get up at 7 every morning and look after horses or children, or it is service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's stepping out of the self. Like, I think a true master has this sense of, I'm okay. I don't need anything for myself because I'm okay. The body feels hungry, so I'll eat that food. But if I don't have it now, or I have it in a few, I'm okay. So I can be focused, like the sun is in a state of constant giving. The sun is always radiating light. It doesn't think of, oh, I need to replenish myself, or the where we're actually going, and the path there, like you just described, is one of surrender, of the self. And my ego fights with that a lot because it wants to be present and in control, and it wants to be the one that gets the credit, or it wants all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that about your depression. And naturopaths are human too, and we suffer
Hmm.
too. In fact, some suffer a lot. And yet there is a thing in our profession where you have to have this, it's the persona and the image of having it all together. And I don't think I don't think you want to, like, break down and start blubbering with tears in your practice with somebody who's suffering. But I don't think naturopaths need to hold the persona of being, that I'm the doctor persona.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm the doctor and I got it all together, So some doctors are very ashamed of themselves if they have an eruption, eczema, or psoriasis, or some kind of manifestation of disease. They feel like they shouldn't because they're a doctor. But I think that it's okay for us to be human and to admit that, because it's actually helpful for our patients to see that, for people to see that.
Yeah. Then, well, yes. And I think we need to first heal thyself. It's one of our naturopathic principles. But then we're just walking beside someone. We're not better than, we're a guiding system for a period of time until they can take off on their own again. That's how we
Right.
should be seen.
Right. And you know, there's in conventional medicine and in naturopathic medicine, you know, green allopathy. There's the idea that I'm the doctor, I have the knowledge that you don't have, and I'm going to tell you what you need in order to get well because you didn't study these things. And that works in the model of allopathy because there's knowledge, and the knowledge is the response. The knowledge from the doctor is the thing that helps. Whereas the more we get in medicine that is working with the healing power of nature, the more we understand as practitioners exactly what you said. We're just a guide. We're helping a person see. Even in holistic counseling or in any kind of counseling, when you're sitting there, you're in a position of, there is an authority there and there is power there. So we have to use the power in the right way and not the wrong way. But the wrong way, in my opinion, would be telling somebody right in that moment of vulnerability what they need to understand. Then it's an allopathic form of counseling. The doctor is providing the solution rather than the solution. This is an important principle of holistic counseling, is that and in homeopathy, is that the healing really does happen in the person, in the patient. And we also pay lip service to that. And then we kind of jump on this bandwagon of like, okay, what do we do for this condition? I'm going to go back to my studies. I'm going to give something that is known to be good for this condition. Whereas that's not how it should work in real healing.
Yeah, it should be very individual.
Very individual, exactly, which is one of our principles. Treat the individual, each person as an individual. 100 people with myasthenia gravis, 100 completely different cases, different beliefs that led to that, different manifestations of the symptoms, and different homeopathic remedies. All is very individualized, completely individualized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So we're nearing the end. We've been together for an hour. This is beautiful. Can you share one more nugget to those that are listening? Maybe how we should perceive even what's going on right now with this virus and lockdown, about taking back our power.
Yeah, well, that seems to be, like I said, the manifestation. So let me put it this way. In chronic illness, a person has a disease for a reason. And it's a good reason, even though it's hard to see and it's painful to recognize. The alternative to that is to ignore the reason and to keep suppressing the symptoms, or to just ignore it, brush it under the carpet, and then to delay the inevitable, which we always have to face anyway. So the way I see what's happening on the planet is a manifestation like COVID and the draconian, very strange measures of censorship that were never seen before. And like there's some kind of collective enforcement of the loss of health freedoms that we're kind of facing. So the way I see this is that humanity is manifesting its illness of externalizing authority, saying, you have the answer for me. Health Canada or the NIH or the World Health Organization or whatever these organizations of medical systems and authority of government, people have externalized to the authority. And that represents a very infantile stage for humanity. To not be infantile and to trust ourselves, for each individual to say, okay, wait a minute, is something non-kosher going on here? Like, is COVID really as bad as we think it is? Do we need these draconian measures? Do we need to offer up our freedom as a means of combating a situation which really, might not be any more serious than the flu? People have died, yes, but people always die from infectious illness. It's normal. It's a part of our history, and it's something that we want to deal with. But there's ways to deal with it too, to save lives. What I'm saying is, like we were talking about fear before, not to let the fear of death control us and externalize to these authorities. So I really think that when humanity gets that, enough people to constitute the collective reality, say, I don't know how much that is. It's like the soup, right?
Yeah.
But when there's enough people that say, no, I'm okay, thanks. I'm okay over here. I can handle myself. I don't need you to determine what's right for me. When enough people recognize that, the illness will heal. It'll spontaneously heal. It's there for a reason. And
Yeah.
funny, because I'm not even referring to the illness of the virus or whatever the heck it is, COVID. I'm talking about the governmental shutdowns and the measures that have been taken as the illness. That's the illness. COVID is part of, whatever it is, the viruses that affect us, they're part of our evolution too. And there's a health in allowing them to enter into the system. They do their thing. We purge, we cough, we throw up, we have diarrhea, we cleanse, and then we're better for it.
Yeah.
We're better for it when we go through it in a healthy way. So the illness is the approach to dealing with it, not the virus itself. Yeah.
Exactly. Brilliant. Yeah. And maybe it is a grand awakening to our own inner power.
Amen. I pray that is. You could see it. You could see it. You could see how many people have started to scratch away at the, like how chickens, they dig, they scratch away at the surface and they start revealing all the juicy stuff underneath to see what's really going on. Because we really need to wake up to that. We really do.
Yeah. I think the first question should be, why censorship? We've always been allowed freedom of speech, and that alone is a huge red flag for me and makes me want to look deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. So the red flag, right? What is a red flag? It's the intuition going, say, hey, something's not right here. We got to listen to that. We have to listen to those red flags, even if it means discomfort and some kind of emotional pain, struggle against, or, when you're kind of wrestling out of the cocoon of transformation, that's not that pleasant. There's pain. You got to unfold those wings. It's painful. We're such a society. We're such a society of avoiding pain. The pain has to be embraced sometimes. It's really the wind in your sails for transformation. So not to expect life to need to be comfortable in every moment. Discomfort is actually really good when it leads you somewhere better than where you are.
Yeah. I love that it's the wind in your sails.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's how you perceive it as well. And, our perception of it is part of cocooning out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Block. You have shared so much wisdom today. And for everyone out there, I want to just remind you, don't give away your power to anyone else. Just go be you and be the wave. Hey, you have a course coming up and we almost forgot to mention it. Can you tell everyone about that, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So basically I'm offering a full program, and I'm calling the Full Certification of Holistic Counseling Mind Body Medicine Program. And it starts this Friday. It's the whole weekend. That's part one. It's a 4-part process. Part one is the foundations course. Part two is an online course that edifies the foundation. And there's lots of live cases to watch and learn from. Part three is the advanced program. And then part four is the mentorship, where I work with the students and practitioners one-on-one to help them wherever they're stuck, wherever they're struggling in the VEAS dialogue. In addition to that, there's a mentorship, a one-on-one healing process where I work one-on-one personally with people to reveal their own beliefs, and I work with homeopathy to transform that. because as we heal, we become better mind-body practitioners for sure. So if anybody's interested in that, they're welcome to go to my website. It's holistic without a W. So HOLISTIC dash or minus sign, counseling with one L, COUNSELING.ca, holisticcounseling.ca. And then you'll be able to see and sign up or ask me any questions. And if you really like the sound of it, but you're not sure, there's a 3-hour introductory video that you can watch. And if you really like to take the course after, you get a rebate that basically nullifies the $49 charge for that. So it's like almost a risk-free thing there.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that kind of learning. And so I would encourage anyone that resonates with that. That's exciting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin.
Yeah. And I'm going to put the links in the write-up. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's coming up pretty soon. So if you're interested, you probably want to get on it pretty soon.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you too.